Okay, I'm back on. Can anybody see me or hear me? I have no idea. Says I'm on. That's good. I don't know. Okay, I see things. I'm gonna hear. Maybe I'll hear somebody, see somebody. This is Todd Wilson, the Familyman, on the MPE live Facebook, and Christy Jolly can hear me. All right. So welcome, Christy. I'm glad to be back. I don't know why my camera shut off. I'm a little afraid that if I touch anything or sneeze, it will shut off again. So if you join us, let me know you can hear me. I guess you could ask questions, or we'll just see how this goes. This is kind of new for me. I've never done it quite this way. I know I sound old like my grandpa. So I should ask, how's the weather there? It's nice and warm here. Cool, a little cooler today. Hope homeschooling's going well. It was kind of a crazy day for us. My kids went skiing today, so homeschooling was a minimum today. As I mean, it didn't happen. So Christy, this may just be you and me. So how you doing? So you're the ones who are going to direct this. So, Christy, thanks for the encouragement. So, I would like some direction. I just don't want to stay here and stammer all the time. It's been a while since I've been to the MPE convention, so I'm excited to be back. I don't know, it's been several years. I think the last time I was there, I had a chunk of kids. I'm going to have less kids this time because we're beginning to run out of children. We started out with 8. Well, we didn't start out with 8 all at once, but we got up to 8, and now my 4 oldest are married. We're expecting our 8th grandchild. My oldest lives right next door. I have another son and his wife who live across the street. I've got a daughter who was just here a few minutes ago, who lives pretty close, within 9 minutes, and another son and his wife who are moving across the street from my other daughter. I mean, like right across the street. So life is good, but it's making convention season different. We've done this. This will be our 20th year of traveling around the country, encouraging moms and dads, and right now it's like we used to go out, all 10 of us, and it was awesome. It's still awesome, but it's not all 10 of us anymore. In fact, we used to go out for like sometimes up to 100 days in a row. This year we're going for 2 weeks at one time, and my wife's like, we're gonna be gone for 2 weeks, and I'm like, honey, we used to do this all the time, be gone all spring from March to the 1st of July. So it's changing for us. It's changing for us. Okay, that's my preliminaries. We've been homeschooling from the very beginning. We started with our kids. That was not our plan. We kind of planned. I went to like a public school. My wife was in a public or a private Christian school, and that's kind of what we thought we would do. We thought we would put our kids in a public school, and we'd win our neighborhood and our community to Christ. But it didn't take very long before I realized that I was going to lose my kids if I put them with all those other kids, because even our little neighbor kids, they would ask me things as a new dad that would make a sailor blush, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to put my kids in there with those kids. So we have our first question. It says, what have been some of the changes you've seen in the homeschool community over all those years? There have been a lot of changes. Some things have not changed. Things that haven't changed are moms still feel overwhelmed. Moms still all feel like they're doing a terrible job. They believe lots of lies that aren't true, and they struggle to smile. So that hasn't changed. I think what has changed is in the old days, all the pressure used to come from the non homeschooling world. People were afraid that uh, they were afraid that the community and the world was putting pressure on them. We used to have to hide, or at least we felt like we did, if we used to go to McDonald's because we thought, oh, we're going to be spotted by the truant officer. I don't even know if there is a truant officer, but we all thought we would. They'd be spotted, and then we'd be in trouble. And we felt like we had to do good to prove it to them. Gone are those days. Now you can go to McDonald's on any given day of the week, and it's filled with kids. Public school, private school, homeschool. It doesn't matter. I don't know how they get out of school, but they do. And so the world kind of knows we're doing an awesome job. In fact, COVID kind of changed how the world looked at us, and all the things they used to say, oh, you can't teach your children at home. All of a sudden, they were like, okay, everybody can do it now. It doesn't matter how many days you do it. Which should be something we should remember, as that kind of is in the rearview mirror now. Glad to be forgotten. But now the pressures that we face, I don't think are from the outside world anymore. They're from our own community, because we get all this pressure from one another to do more, do better, do faster, do sooner. And they're saying things like, well, are you doing this? Are your kids, they're only 4 and 5. Are they doing chapter books? Do they know what a noun is and what a verb is? I just saw a Facebook post yesterday, or 2 days ago on ours, that some mother was saying, it's so hard with her kids, but every once in a while she gets to see, in the midst of life, she gets these precious times where when it finally clicks on her, her 5-year-old, the difference between nouns and verbs. And I'm thinking, you missed it. The precious things are all the family stuff, all the chaos, and the things that aren't as precious are the nouns and the verbs. In fact, I was saying that to my 16-year-old son. I said, Cal, after reading that, I said, do you know what a noun is? He goes, it's a person, place, or thing. And I'm like, how do you know that? Schoolhouse Rock. And that's exactly all I know about the English language is lolly, 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 get your adverbs here. And I am a writer. I spend my life writing and speaking too. I don't do either one of them very well. But I don't know any of those things. I don't know what a dangling participle is. But there's this pressure on us homeschoolers to do those things and the thing is, we always can't do it. We can't do them always very well, and so we feel again defeated. And so again, I just think the pressures that we face today are different than they used to be. It used to be really clear back in the old days. People knew why they homeschooled. It was for because we didn't like how the school was doing it, so we decided we could do better. And so we may not have had a lot of how-tos, but we knew why. Now we have lots of how-tos, but we've forgotten the why-tos sometimes. And that's really what I'm going to talk about when I come to MPE at the very end of March and the 1st of April. I'm going to remind you again of why we homeschool, because that makes all the difference in the world. It's the difference between not smiling and smiling. And that's really what I want. I want homeschooling moms, to smile. I want my wife to smile. But sometimes I know it's hard for her because she has all these pressures, not only to homeschool, but to family and to do all those other things. And it's a team effort. I want dads to encourage their wives. I want them to help them to smile. I want kids to smile. But again, some of those pressures have taken some of that away. All right, Samantha, you're a future homeschooler here at 23, 24. We're taking the leap. Awesome. It is kind of a leap too. People always used to say, I'd be curious to hear how old your children are, Samantha. But you know, everybody used to say, "Oh, back in the old days, they were the pioneers," and now I don't know what they say we are. We're the settlers or something like that. The truth is, we're all pioneers. Some of us, like Samantha, I'm going to guess, you know, we don't know what the road ahead what the road. We don't know what lies ahead on the road, or something like that. And so it's kind of scary for everybody. So Samantha, my hat is off to you. They don't wear a hat very often, but I think your oldest is 9, youngest is 3.5. So you quite the spread there. That's a great age to homeschool. So Samantha, again, you're going to want to be at the MPE conference because I'm going to help give you some things to shore you up. Because the thing about it, sometimes we get excited about homeschooling, but after we're in it about 3 months, then we get a little wobbly, and we're like, maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. In fact, I just had a email 2 days ago, maybe, from a mom who she had asked me back in December, what should I do kind of emails, and she said, what should I do? My son, he's not enjoying it. He's making it hard. Every day's a struggle, and of course, I gave her some. I don't know about tips, but I gave her some encouragement, and I said, you can do it, kind of thing. Um, and then she just wrote me 2 days ago and said, I caved in. I put him back in school. And she said, he was 10. She said, already we've seen him begin to cuss and use words that he thinks are cool and fun, and we're appalled by, and we know this is not good for him. And so she said, what do you think I should do? And I wrote back and I said, get him out! Get him out of there, because it's the best thing for him. We don't homeschool because we think our kids are going to be happier doing this. What's not? She said, oh, he loves school. I don't think he likes the school part. I think he likes the kid part, the fun part. I'm like, what's not to like? You're surrounded by kids all day. You have a locker. You hang out at your locker. You spend a lot of time doing nothing. It is fun, but it's not good. It is not good. In fact, I reminded her of a comment I heard a long time ago by Cal Thomas. I don't know if you're old enough to even know who Cal Thomas is, but he was kind of a commentator, and I one time heard him on Focus on the Family, and Jim Dobson was talking to him, and he said, so Cal, what do you think about our school systems today? And he said, I think we need to treat our schools like they're on fire and get our kids out. And Jim Dobson kind of backed a little bit, like, Cal, now you're not saying everybody needs to homeschool their kids. And he's saying, I'm not saying everybody needs to homeschool their kids, but I know everybody needs to get their kids out of the school because it's not a good place for them. So, I'll just encourage you, Samantha, again, to know why you're going to do this, because your oldest is 9. He's already tasted the good life, but he doesn't know there's something better. And sometimes it doesn't always taste better right away. But you can do it. You can do it. Someone asked, do you know of support groups, networks, etc. for homeschool dads? There's a lot for homeschooling moms, but sometimes we get questions about what exists for the dads. Here's what I know. I encourage homeschool dads. I encourage homeschool dads who are married to homeschooling moms. I get probably about every event that I go to, I get 1, maybe 2 dads who say, I'm the homeschooler. Is there anything for me? So far, I haven't found anything. And I know there are a lot of different pressures on homeschooling dads than there are on homeschooling moms. I talk to homeschooling moms, and all homeschooling moms feel like they're doing a lousy job. That's just one of the lies that homeschooling moms believe. Dads don't feel that way. You ask a dad and you say, you think you're doing a good job? They're like, yeah, I've seen worse. I think I'm doing okay. But there are a lot of other pressures, because dads sometimes battle with that. I should be the one taking care of my family. I'm supposed to be the provider, and now here they are teaching their kids, and their wife maybe is the breadwinner, and they struggle in that. So my encouragement, and no one's ever taken me up on it that I know of, if you're a dad who's doing the homeschooling, start a group. Let me know about it. Let the folks at MPE know about it. And again, I applaud you, but you're going to kind of have to figure out that out on your own, because you need a different kind of encouragement. It just doesn't work when the dads come to the all homeschool mom event and they're sitting there. It feels a little awkward, and again, I think they have different needs. So there you go. Christy, you're too nice. I'm an average speaker, but you should go to all my workshops. So I'll take that. I'll take that. Anybody else? Because I think we've got like 45 more minutes. So if you can think of some obscure questions, that would be great. So I don't know, I could hum a little bit, or I could whistle. Just a little, some of you are probably just trying to see all the things in my office. This is my office. My office is covered with all the things that I think are important. I've got every scrap of paper that my kids have ever drawn a picture on. All these photos, these are old-fashioned photos that when we went to digital, like my wife was going to throw them away. I couldn't part with them. I've got them stapled to my walls. They're on my ceiling. They're on my door. They're everywhere. I'm a souvenir collector of things that matter. So I have little sticks stapled to my wall. I've got a pair of socks stapled to my wall. My son Ike, who's expecting his first child, he's got these Buzz Lightyear socks that he loved wearing. And they have big holes in them. They threw them away, and so I stapled them to my wall. I know it's probably, I have issues. Okay. Shancy's asking questions. So she feels sorry for me. Do you think it's different to homeschool one child versus multiple children in grades, as in different enough to warrant different educational approaches? Can you still homeschool both? Yes. Should you homeschool 1 or 10? Yes. And in fact, I won't say it's easier or harder, because I found, and I've seen it at others, that whether you have 2 children or 1 child or 10 children, they take up all your time. If you have 1 child, they take up all your time. I will say, I think there's more pressure on a parent with a single child, because the pressure comes not from, they may be delightful students, you may enjoy being with them. In fact, I know moms with 1 child who they know it's passing so quickly, they don't want to miss any of it, which I would be the same way. But I know sometimes other people can say, well, isn't it better if you had them out there so they could be making friends and they could be surrounded by other kids, and so they wouldn't have to be lonely in their house that is like a prison. Again, I think more long term than that. Here's what I want for my children when they grow up. I want my sons and my daughters to know that the primary unit that they should be ministering in and spending their time in is the family. I want them to love being part of their home. And so in our homeschool, that's what we've taught them. Maybe one of the greatest lessons isn't math or some of those other things. It's that we function together as a family, and family's a great thing. If you have 1 child, you know what I would want my son or my daughter to know? That we function together as a family, and family's a great thing. Because I don't want to teach them that family is something you want to get out of. That you need more people in your life so you can have more, because you have to have some me time, and you need to have, go out with, which is fine to go out with friends. I'm not saying that. But I know some dads, and I know some moms, and sorry, my nose is itching. I know some dads and moms who look at their own homes like they've got to get away from it. And they spend so much time trying to do other things when they miss the very best of home. So yeah, I do think there are differences in the way we homeschool one or we homeschool a bunch. I think both are beautiful. I think both are um, warrant being at home. I still think home's the best place for our kids. Christy asks, have you decided on your workshop titles you're going to speak on at the MPE conference? I have not. Usually those are chosen for me. But my themes are often the same. My themes are about, you know, the things that we believe in, not believing lies. It's teaching our children and sons and daughters what really, really matters, trying to decide what really matters. One of the workshops I do is, how to homeschool what you believe. I have lots of moms who say, I know this doesn't really matter, but everybody tells me it does, so I feel like I need to do it. And I just want to encourage parents to do what they know to be true. We're going to talk about things that steal your smile and things that make smiles, not just in you, but also in your children. I talk about dreaming big, or trying to get a hold of technology and trying to tame that techno beast. So lots of stuff with the same, my heartbeat passion behind all of it is that I want to see, again, you smile. I want to see your children smile. I want to see your husband smile. I just want to see you all smile because as homeschoolers, we got the best thing going. Here's one Samantha wrote. I wrote our superintendent, BOE, Board of Education, I'm going to guess that is, the other day. And long story short, I did include that we are leaving public school and why. One of the board members responded and basically said that as a Christian, we should be sending our kids to, sending our kids to school because the other kids need their example and influence. How would you respond? I do care about all the students, but my first responsibility is to my children, and I hate what SEL is doing to our youth. You're going to have to help me on SEL. But public schools embracing the agenda, and I don't think it's good for my kids. I'm terrible at acronyms or whatever those are called, abbreviations. SEL. Help me on that one. But I've heard that over and over again. I mean, that's not a new argument. Christians use that. And I think sometimes, social emotional learning. Social emotional. Okay, two people came up with the same thing, so it must be social emotional learning. I get that. I hate that too. I hate that. And here's what I hear. I hear parents say, and I think they're well-meaning, and I think they, because I think sometimes they have something invested in the public school, so they don't want to, they feel a little defensive, and they will say things like, well, don't you think our children should be salt and light in the school? Here's the deal. I've never seen kids be salt and light in the school. I went to public school. I was a Christian. I wasn't salt. I wasn't light. You know what I was? I kept my head down. I was just trying to stay out of the target zone because I knew that if I acted different, everything would turn to me. And I knew lots of Christian friends. I never saw any of them be salt and light. Maybe some of us were not as dark as the others. Maybe we weren't as what the opposite of salt is. But here's my fear. My fear is that we're going to put our kids in these places. And you know what I've seen? I've seen them not be salt and light, but I've seen them lose their saltiness. And the Bible's super clear. If we lose our saltiness, I'll say, if our children lose their saltiness, the Bible says, what are they good for? Nothing. To be thrown out and trampled upon. And that's what the pattern that I see. I see our children losing because how do you stand up to, like Samantha said, Marxist and anti-family in their teaching? Of course, it's all that and more. I mean, I see horrendous things that sometimes I can't even believe it's true. And I'll question, like, that really happened in your school? And they're like, yep. I can't believe it. And I think, how could our kids not be affected by that? And so, again, I just don't buy it. I don't care what they say. They may say it. I'd look them dead in the eye and say, I don't see it happening. I don't want my kids to lose their saltiness. I'm going to keep doing it. Okay. You've already educated me. I know what SEL is, even though I probably won't remember it for very long. How about something else? Another question. We only got a few of you out there, so you got to come up with lots of questions here, because we still have some time together. You can ask personal questions. I like personal questions, really hard questions. You know, so now's your time to ask. Otherwise, Shancy is gonna just have to ask questions left and right. How did your wife get into homeschooling? I knew she could do it. You know, it's kind of like I said at the beginning. You know, we planned on putting our kids in school. We planned to be salt and light. But again, I mean, I remember vividly my this little neighbor girl. Again, we thought our kids we were gonna use them to be salt and light. We were salt and light, you know, as a family until we had kids, you know. And this little girl, she must have been 5. She asked me a question that was startlingly, you know, embarrassing. And I thought, wow, she knows a lot more about everything than I do. And I thought, I am not putting my kids with these kids or I'm going to lose them, because I will not be able to undo 9 hours of their teaching and influence in the few hours that I had with them every day. I hardly knew any homeschoolers. We had a sister-in-law who was doing it, but we didn't know much about what they were doing. And I said to my wife, what do you think about homeschooling? And my wife's like, nope, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. And we thought about it, talked about it, prayed about it. And finally, I kind of convinced her. I said, okay, how about we do it? But if it gets too hard, we'll put them in school. And that was always kind of like her little escape hatch. And you know, that's kind of how we function. We kind of did it a year at a time thing, which a lot of people do. After a while, we just basically said, nah, we're not going to do it a year at a time. This is going to be our life. No matter what, we're doing it to the end. And here we are, you know, I don't know how many years. We've probably done it at least 20, 25 years maybe of homeschooling. And guess what? We're down to our last couple of years, 3 years. And it's shocking that we could be over in 3.5 years. And as hard as it was, we're going to miss it so much. And in fact, I'll tell you, this was such not just a huge decision. It was the best decision we ever made. I remember I was speaking at a little event in St. Louis, Missouri, which isn't too far from you. And there was this mom. She was kind of in charge of the event. We were having pizza right before the event, and she said, excuse me, I got a little tickle in my throat. She said to me, you know, we've homeschooled our kids. We're done. She said, my kids are 31 years old now. And she said, you know, we made a lot of mistakes in our parenting life. Things that I wish I could do over again. And then she said, but choosing to home educate my children was not one of our mistakes. And I thought, you know, that's a pretty bold statement that anybody would ever say that, because, you know, to say, yeah, I did this well, is hard for me to do. But I would agree with her. Choosing to home educate our children was not one of the many mistakes that I made with my kids. It was not a mistake. It was the greatest choice we ever made, and it's changed the direction of our family. Has influenced our children greatly, and I believe that it has put them on a path that they would not be on. And it just breaks my heart to imagine what it could have been like. But I'm so thankful that we lived in a time where homeschooling was easy. You live in a time where homeschooling's easy. So it's a great thing. Lindsay said, how to discipline boys. Lots of boys. Like how many? Like, do you have 20? We have 6 boys and 2 girls. Our boys harder to discipline. In my experience, probably. Um, and by discipline, maybe I should ask for clarification, like what kind of discipline. I'm very careful in how I talk about disciplining children because I still have some young children. But come and get me, come and ask me that same question, as soon as my last one turns 18, and I'm going to fill you in on all the gory details. But I will say, how do you keep them in line? That's better. How do you keep them in line? You don't. That's wishful thinking, Lindsay. But I would keep them busy, and I would not let them fall into the trap of playing video games. Video games are a killer of boys. Just like really all social media can kill girls. But video games are a trap that I'm seeing lots and lots of kids fall into. My kids have fallen into that, at times. But I will say, like my 2 youngest, we're seeing what, and my workshops are coming up now, so that's a good thing to see. But for my 2 youngest, we don't allow my kids to play video games anymore. Not that they can't play them occasionally when they go to a friend's house, but they don't play them in our house anymore. When we did that about 2 years ago, I thought we would be facing World War 4, 5, and 6 all rolled into one. It was my wife's suggestion, and I thought, oh man, this is going to be bad. Because already we weren't letting our kids play very much. But they didn't complain once. They've never complained. In fact, you know what their one complaint is? Their other friends don't want to do anything except play video games. And, it just gives my kids so much more freedom to do other things. I was watching a kid just the other day who's, I don't know, about a freshman. I'm sorry. Oh, I can get a piece of candy because I always keep candy here just for my grandkids, just in case. But he plays basketball, and I said, man, he used to be so much better, I said to my wife. And she said, it's because he used to practice all the time, but now all he does is play video games. That's what the word on the street is. And so, I think, though, if you want to keep him in line, I don't think it's that easy. But don't let them get caught up in those things. It's easy to let them play because that's when they're quiet. That's when they're not doing anything. I got stuck on this for a minute. So, but we have standards for our boys. We have standards for our girls, and we always try to bring them to that standard. But I think especially as they get older, I think part of the boys are like young bucks. They're always using their horns, always pushing and shoving each other, and sometimes that transfers into. I should have brought a glass of water. It transfers into us. And Lindsay, I get it. You said it's hard to get them to respect you sometimes. I think sometimes for our boys, the thing is with boys, I think they love their moms dearly. I know sometimes my boys can be disrespectful. I heard something the other day, and I had to go and deal with it. I would get your husband involved if you have a husband. And I would sometimes I'd come down hard on disrespect. But I wouldn't read too much into it. I wouldn't read into it. They don't respect you. I think sometimes they just can't control all the emotions that are coming. And I will say as a teenager, as a teenager, they go through this wave of teenagerness. And it really hit all my boys, some harder than others. And sometimes they're just like bombs ready to go off. I would just be patient with that. Again, I would keep the standard. You're not allowed to talk this way to your mom. Get your husband involved. Dad says, you can't talk that way. If you do, there's this consequence or this punishment. And then I try to be understanding because, I think the last thing the last thing they need us to do is to give up on them. I think they just want us to dog them, to remember that when you're 12, 13, they don't feel the same as you do when you're 35 or 45. But they'll get there. Don't give up on your boys. I know it's hard. They're exhausting, but I'll tell you what. As they get older, it gets more awesome. Because even now, my boys will still wrestle on the floor, and they're 29 and 26 and 24, and they challenge each other, and it's so awesome to watch. So awesome to watch. Okay, Christy asked, do you think all your children will homeschool their children? I sure hope they will. I know my oldest is planning to. I think all my other kids are. But I don't know. I hope they do. I know some homeschooling parents whose children didn't, and it was hard. It would be hard. It would be heartbreaking to me in some ways. But I still have to believe that I train them to be wise. And maybe I don't see something, and maybe they see it a little bit differently than I would. Here's a little bit of my fear. I don't know how this plays out. I don't know what you do differently. Sometimes our kids don't think it's that big a deal. They can't even imagine what public school would be like because they never experienced it. And maybe they have to make a mistake of putting their kids in for a little while. Sometimes even for just a very short time. To find out how bad it is. Plus, I think I'm hoping that some of our older kids, as they get out, will be the next voices to the second generation of homeschoolers. I know sometimes my son is shocked that some of his homeschooled friends are homeschooling. And he will challenge them like, why would you not? So right now I think my kids are going to, and that's what I hope and pray for. And if they don't, I guess God will have a lesson for me in there. And I can trust that he's going to work in them, and get them where he wants them to be. So, how's that? How about Gina? Well, Genevieve. Oh, Genevieve. That's a great name. I hope I'm saying that right. Maybe share ways. I disappeared. Maybe share ways you kept your boys constructively busy that weren't video games or school. I know my wife feels this way sometimes. That sometimes she feels like that she has to be like a cruise director. That she has to provide all the stuff for them. Like, I got to keep them busy. I got to keep them doing this or they will. I don't feel necessarily that way. I feel more like if we can keep them from doing certain things, like time fillers. TV and video games are time fillers. I know I'm a TV kid. I don't like video games, but I was raised on TV. Don't tell my mom I said that. She hates when I say it. But I like TV. I mean, I'd rather watch TV than talk to you all right now. And if you gave me the choice, that's what I would go do. But, when you take that away, I don't have anything else to do. So I've got to do something more constructive. I think, that if we take away those things, TV and video games, they will find out what they wanted. They will find out and explore. And, they'll sit around and mope for a little while. But if you don't play their game and go, hey, you can sit in that couch as long as you want, but you can't play video games or watch TV, eventually they will go find something and they will explore. But again, we get so tired of them nagging at us that we cave in. They know it works. We don't like to admit that it works, but it works. And so I let them be bored and let them figure it out. And I found out that it always works. Always works. Again, you may not decide to go cold turkey on your kids and say, hey, we're not going to play video games anymore. But you should be limiting it. I don't know what their limit is, but I believe God makes it clear to parents what it should be. If you feel like your kids are playing too many video games or watching too much TV, then they're playing too many video games and watching too much TV. So just make it a limit. Say, hey, you got an hour today, an hour not tomorrow, but the next day, and then they got to fill it in after that. But I wouldn't fall into the trap of thinking you've got to be the Love Boat cruise director and you have to keep them busy all the time. Hope that helps a little bit. Um, Gina asked, any any resource any resources for homeschooling kids from hard places or a trauma background? That's a really hard one, Gina. I don't know if I have any resources for that, but I would say if you've been through a terrible trauma, whether and then they're coming into your home through adoption or even maybe foster care or maybe you're a grandparent or whatever. I think home's the best place for your kids. I mean, what a great place to heal. I think Diane Kraft once said, and she said, if your kids have been in a school setting for like 3 years, kindergarten, first, second grade, then when you decide to homeschool them and you pull them out, you should give them a month of detoxing for every year. So you take 3 months where you don't do anything. I would say if you had a child who came out of trauma, I would do very little school. I would do a lot of loving, a lot of reading out loud. I would play games. I would work on relationship. I would give them a place that feels really, really safe. Because school doesn't feel safe. School is not a safe place. But home is not that. Home is a haven in the midst of a turbulent world, especially now. And I think again, if you've gone through some hard times, that I would just, and I'm sure you can find some resources, but I would concentrate more on just the home part over the school part. Christy said, the first time you attended an MPE conference, I remember you saying we should smack each other on the, I can't say B-U-T-T, I'm sorry, I have to say rear end, and say, go get him, Tiger. We both do this often, and it's all because of you. Christy went back and said, my husband and I do this, as opposed to her and other people, her and her kids. I know. I thought maybe that's what you were saying from your very first or your second comment, maybe. Yes, I'm glad you do it. That's awesome. I wish my wife did it more, but that's awesome. I don't know if I'll be giving that talk. I'll have to look at that time or the list she put down. Oh, can you give some preview tips on helping your kids argue? Coming up at a workshop. So that must be one of the topics. Preview tips? I'm not going to give too much. I don't want to give too much of the farm away. But here's what I will say. I just don't like easy answers. I don't like when someone goes, oh, here are the 14 steps to having a non-arguing house. I have found them never to work. But here's what I want. I want to be able to argue in certain ways that we don't lock down, we don't do too much damage, even though damage is always done. That's what people who love each other do. And just the other day, my wife said, I can't believe you said that to me. I'm like, that's what married people say. People who love each other, we get angry and we say stupid things. But that's okay. Because I ask forgiveness and hopefully she'll forgive me. And, and the important thing, too, is this is bigger than us. I know some parents who say, well, we don't want our children to see us argue. And I'm like, why not? That's, again, one of the most valuable homeschooling lessons we can teach our kids. Because I know, wouldn't it be a travesty if our kids got to be adults when they're married and, when they're going through some hard time and they said, well, my parents never argued. That's, of course, untrue. So when my kids see my wife and I argue, they always see a husband or a dad who makes it right. Even if my wife says, I don't want to, no, you didn't, you meant it, and gives me a hard time, I am never going to quit. I'm going to keep pursuing. Not because I'm a great husband, but because I want my sons and my daughters to know how to ask forgiveness one day and how to argue. So we're going to kind of talk about some of those things. We're going to talk about some common things that we do, that I don't want to do. And, we're not going to talk about that righteous kind of anger. We're going to talk about that ugly kind of anger that we all tend to fall into from time to time, which is normal. We don't like it. It's not great, but, but we don't give up. Gina kind of clarified. You adopted them and through the foster care. We had them in the public school, but the Lord has laid it on your heart to homeschool. Gina, I mean, that's just awesome. I'm telling you, you are plucking them out of the fire. And what a great place to grow up. Not just for them, but for all kids, I mean, because school is an okay place if you're average and you fit in. But it is a cruel place if you don't fit in. I mean, some of my children, and probably some of your children, talking to everybody, would be labeled, labeled as hard or labeled as slow or labeled as this or that, either by teachers or even by students, and they carry those labels forever. But at our home, they're just our kids, and they get to excel because we let them do the things they're good at. So if I have a kid who's good with pounding nails, guess what he does lots of his days? He builds things and he pounds nails and he's great at it. And he'll probably make more money than all the rest of us, And I love that part of homeschooling. So I think it's gonna be a great thing, Gina. So good. Shancy asked again, if you had to start homeschooling all over again, is there one thing oh man, they moved on me. One thing you'd want to change? That's an interesting thought. If you could maybe, I don't think I'd change anything. I mean, I loved it. I know that we were a little more rigid at the beginning, and we kind of relaxed as things went on. Not relaxed like we got lazier, but we realized stuff that we were all stressed out about didn't need to be stressed out about. I'll tell you, I just believe in homeschooling so much. I've seen the byproduct. I love raising our kids outside the box. Now, I will tell you, it gets a little scary at the end because sometimes when you raise your kids outside the box, guess where they want to live when they get ready to graduate? Outside the box, because we train them that way. So don't be surprised. Don't freak out, because sometimes what we end up doing is we raise our kids outside the box, we train them outside the box, and then on the day of graduation, we have them dress up like all the other graduates in the world, and we want them to have plans like all the other graduates in the world. And I think, that's not what we've trained them for all these years. So I don't think I'd do anything different. Maybe I would tell my early self, this could be a fun ride. Kind of enjoy it because it's going to go really, really fast. Gina said again, my girls love school. They're both on IEPs. Change is so hard, but I know it will be the best for them. I don't know what an IEP is. Gina, don't use these letters for me. I don't know them. But I think that's awesome. You're going to do a great job. We're getting closer to the end of our time, and I've got to be done right at 8 o'clock your time, Central Standard Time, because I'm getting ready to do the Smiling Homeschooler podcast, which is our podcast. We do it live on our Facebook page, the Smiling Homeschooler, and then we turn it into a podcast, 30-minute podcast. But we're going to do it today on what can we let slide, like in subjects. Are there some subjects that we can just let them disappear and we don't have to sweat over them? And I think they're individual education plan. I love that. IEP. I love that. Yes, individualized education plan. You're also much smarter than I am. And I think that's the beauty of homeschooling, because it's all individual. Okay. Uh, so, in the next 11 minutes, anybody got any more burning questions? I have about tapped you all out. I know you're like asking people in your house, ask Todd a question so he has something to talk about. So, my feelings are not, I'm not easily hurt. So, I'm good if you don't have any more questions. We can ramble some more. I should have had my glass of water because that's where I would have taken it right then. Favorite family board game? Now we're digging deep. Um, remember, Chancy, I said I'm a TV kid, so I wasn't raised on board games. I That's why they were called board games. But my kids love board games, and my wife loves board games. And I think we're kind of getting away from because my family's so big, and I'll tell you, my older kids are over at my house probably 3 or 4 times a week. I mean, almost everybody. It's really amazingly loud. It's amazing beyond my wildest dreams. This is a dad who feels very blessed and full. But so we play sometimes instead of board games, we'll play, kind of, I don't know what you'd call them, not necessarily card games like Apples to Apples, but those kind of games. They just had a new one that was kind of a trivia game. So we can all kind of sit around and we don't have to be doing things on boards. We do things, where we keep scores and things like that for our own double ditto and things like that. So my kids like that. But of course, this is time for a commercial. You can always get our Christmas game To Bethlehem, which is, of course, a holiday favorite. You can get it on our website at thesmilinghomeschooler.com. And my kids do love it. But we only play it at Christmas time. So I wish I was more of the game person. I'm just not. I don't like recreational thinking. I'm just like, we have to play a game. I have to think. But it is. We always love it. It's fun to see my kids interact because some of them just think differently, and it's fun. That was a good question. I can just stare at you, and you can stare at me. I'll ask you a question. How about a good restaurant while we're at the event at MP. I was like MP3. No, that's not it. MPE. Like I went to one that was near there. I think it was like a bottle cap place. It was like in a strip mall, but it was like they made Jack Stack. Ooh, that sounds good. Stacks like in Flapjacks or something like that. Blind Box Barbecue in Shawnee. Okay, all right. That's exactly what I'm looking for. But there was one again where they had the bottles like in the racks and they went around the place. I don't know, somewhere around there. But we're always looking for something good. We have 7 minutes. Genevieve, we're excited to be back in KC. Jack Stack Barbecue. Oh, it is barbecue. I like barbecue. This is that awkward silence now. I don't know how people do this. I mean, like who have you? I saw that you had. I don't know if it was this year, or last year. You had a few people that I knew, so I kind of went back in over the years. I saw Hal Melly Young and Israel Wayne, and then me. KC equals barbecue. All right, I did not know that. Are you all just staring at me now? Or are you? What are you looking? What are you doing? Are you like looking at my pictures on my wall? Are you like trying to see things, or I don't know what you're doing now? Because all I can see is me and your comments. Maybe you can tell me, how long have you been homeschooling? Like how many years? We know. Uh, uh, is Gina? You're just starting, right? No. I'm going back. Who's the first? Who said they're just starting? Somebody just started. Sing us a song. In your dreams. 13 years. Oh, 7 kids. God is good. You're right. What's the Abe for? Abe is for my son Abraham. He was at his uncle's and they had a CNC machine. He's a college professor, so they made Abe. I think I've got an Ike. I've got an Ike over here, so there's Ike. That's my son Isaac. Again, I've got everything. Like I said, we're expecting our 8th grandchild. These are just added. These are Pops. They call me Pops. They call my wife Minnie, the grandchildren do. So Renly is our oldest. She just turned 6. So that's Renly. And this is me standing next to her. She's got the princess crown. I'm the king. And then Hudson made this of Pops and Hudson. So I'm all starting to add their artwork as well. Christy says, I'm done. I have a 22, 24, and 26-year-old girls. I homeschool all the way through. That's awesome. Oh, Christy, you're never done. There's still lessons to teach them. Maybe the most important lessons, really, after they leave your school. But you're able to see the reward of homeschooling. 6 years, 2 kids so far. That's awesome. Okay, those were some questions. We're down to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Shancy's kind of in charge of all this, and I hope I'm saying your name right. I think that is correct. Shancy. And you're right, we're never done. And that's the cool thing about, maybe about homeschooling is because I just don't see it as this thing. I wish we hadn't called it homeschooling. I wish somebody would have just said, this is family. And it would have been no big deal, and we would have just trained them for life, and it wouldn't have felt all this pressure. And I don't see, people will say, oh, we haven't started homeschooling. And I'm like, well, you got 2 babies. Of course you've homeschooled. The homeschooling starts when you bring them home from the hospital. And you're done when you die, and you teach them how to die. That is a full curriculum right there. I was a pastor for 10 years, and when some of my older children, when they got married, people would say, are they doing marriage counseling? Premarital counseling? I'm like, we did premarital counseling for the last 20 years of their life. Why do I think that a few weeks is going to make a difference? And I believe that. It's not just a cute thing. I've been training them for their whole lives, and that's homeschooling. Well, Genevieve, you're very kind. I hope, thanks for allowing me to join you. I'm going to say good night, everybody, because I've got to go do another one of these. But I'm excited to see you at MPE in, I guess, a couple months. The very last of March, the 1st of April. I hope that's not a joke, April 1st. I'm planning to be there. I hope you're there and you'll join me. Chris, even though you're done, I expect you to be there because everybody needs to hear from you as well. So have a great night, everybody. I'm going to pray for you before I go, okay? Okay, let's pray. Father, we just thank you for this time. I thank you for what you have done, what you're going to do, what you are doing. And I thank you so much for allowing us to be homeschoolers and allowing us to be parents. I pray that you would help us not to lose sight of the value of it, the how much it matters to them and to us. And I pray for the moms and dads who are maybe going through a hard time right now. We just encourage them, help them not to grow weary in doing good. And we pray all this in your name. Amen. Good night, everybody. We'll see you at MPE.